Of course, we will have questions, possibility to ask questions of our presenters at the end of the session, but if you would like to, so to speak, register questions by posting them in the chat, please feel free to do so. The presentation this afternoon is by Tomaž Erjavec and Matyáš Kopp. Tomaž is a member of the Department of Knowledge Technologies at the Jožef Stefan Institute in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Matyáš is a member of the Institute for Formal Applied Linguistics at the Charles University in Prague in the Czech Republic. Together, they have been amongst the leaders of the ParlaMint project, which is part of the CLARIN network in Europe. And this project focused on the creation of comparable and uniformly annotated corpora of parliamentary debates in Europe. We're really looking forward to hear what you have to tell us about this project, Tomaž and Matyáš, and I hand the floor to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. So as said, it will be mostly me talking. Matyáš will jump in with once you have your questions, because lots of technical details he knows much better than I do. With that said, yeah, let's just start. This is a brief overview of the talk. I'll give you an introduction. I will introduce you to the latest version of the ParlaMint corpora. Then kind of the focus is basically, as far as I understood, you're interested maybe in contributing to the ParlaMint effort with the Australian transcription of your parliamentary proceedings. So I will tell you how the whole thing is set up from the viewpoint of somebody that would want to contribute. And then I will have some conclusions. I didn't actually time the talk so that it would take up the whole hour. So afterwards, depending how things go, I would show you a little bit. I would give you a walkthrough through our GitHub repository, so you get an idea how things are structured there. And of course, there will be time for questions. Again, as said, if you do have any questions as I go on, please feel free to ask them. Maybe put them in the chat so that we don't get some audio problems. I have some problems with my headphones, so this is actually on my computer's microphone, but I hope you can hear me well. So the introduction. The ParlaMint was developed so far in the scope of two CLARIN flagship projects. Now, before I go on, it occurred to me only after the slides were actually made that you might not know what CLARIN is. So just a few words on that. This is a research infrastructure, a European research infrastructure, which is not so much centrally led, but centrally managed maybe. And this is the CLARIN, the European Research Infrastructure Consortium, which is based in the Netherlands. But most of the work in CLARIN goes on in national consortia, and most of the European countries are a member of this consortium. Not only European countries, the CLARIN is open to to other countries as well. So, for instance, South Africa is also a member. And yeah, the main point of CLARIN is to make language resources and technologies available as widely as possible. We maintain a network of repositories where you can find lots of language data and also tools and technologies. And the focus is mostly on social sciences and humanities. So not so much for computer scientists, computational linguists, although for them as well. But yeah, the focus is kind of digital humanities or digital social sciences. With that said, yeah, CLARIN now almost 5 years ago, because of COVID, essentially, there was some surplus of money because it didn't organize its annual conference as it usually does, and that's a big drain on the budget. So they had some money left over, and they came up with this idea of flagship projects where they give some money, not a whole lot, but still, to a project that will convince the committee. And we came up with this idea of making a set of comparable corpora of parliamentary proceedings, and it was accepted not only once, but actually twice. So we had a series of 2 projects, Parliament 1 and 2, where quite a few partners from the CLARIN network joined in, approximately 25. It kind of depends whether Parliament 1 or Parliament 2, but yeah, a large set of partners scattered all over Europe. And the main idea of the project was to compile a set of openly available, comparable, and richly annotated corpora of parliamentary debates in Europe, with kind of a focus here was that the corpora should be interoperable in the sense that if you have some script that does something with the corpus, with one of the corpora, it should work on all of the corpora. So yeah, that was the focus. The project also had some other work packages. Not the least of them was dissemination in use cases. So then Parliament was presented at 3 hackathons, digital humanities hackathons, which are organized every year in Helsinki. We had a tutorial at the Digital Humanities Conference in Austria in 2023. We participated in a shared task at CLEF 2024 and now in 2025 and so on. So we did quite a lot of work on trying to disseminate as well. Quite a lot of information about the project is available on the CLARIN website, and here we have the URL. Yeah, if there will be interest, I can, of course, or we can, of course, share the slides afterwards. So you get these hyperlinks and you don't need to jot them down. So yeah, that's your kind of background to the project. In the second project, we managed to then collect data and, of course, yeah, process the data for 29 parliaments. This is 26 countries and 3 autonomous regions in Europe. Yeah, here you have the map, so you can see which ones were included. And I'm not quite sure why Spanish are so keen on their autonomous regions and kind of regional parliaments, but they are. So we also have then, yeah, the Catalonia, Galicia, and Basque regional parliaments, which is, of course, very interesting because they all have their own languages as well. So one should not actually confuse here the countries that we cover with the languages that are included in Parliament. They are mostly the same, but yeah, with some twists, which I will yeah, come to a bit later. We are kind of really sorry that not everything is green here, but yeah, some countries didn't have an interest, or they had their own projects going on, or they told us 3 times, like Germany, that they would contribute, but somehow never got around to it. Anyway, this is the state that we have now. So quite a lot of green, but quite a lot of yeah, light gray as well still. So much for a quickie introduction. Now going directly to Parliament 5.0, which is, as I said, the latest version that we released this year. This one was actually released in the scope of in a way, continuation project of Parliament, which is so-called ParlaCap project, with the full name Comparing Agenda Settings Across Parliaments via the Parliament Dataset. Now, the main idea here is not to expand the corpus in terms of new countries or larger date ranges, but rather to add interesting new information, metadata, into the corpora. Not only that, but to bring Parliament corpora closer to the needs that social scientists have. They're much more used to working with tabular kind of files, which can be directly imported into R or maybe, I don't know, some other platforms, rather than dealing with textual corpora. So ParlaCap has here two main things: add new metadata into the corpora, and I'll come to what metadata a bit later, and then also releasing the corpora in the scope of the Croatian, this time, repository for social scientists, so that we get some impact on the social sciences scene as well, not only in the humanities. Now, and in the scope of ParlaCap, we released, as I said, Parliament Corpora 5.0. Now, the data sets that we released, they're all released in the Slovenian CLARIN repository, and they come in kind of 3 batches, 3 items in the repository. It's not all one thing, but it's 3 things. And the first one is just your standard ParlaMint set of corpora, which have all the metadata, are encoded the way we want them to be encoded, and they're, of course, available. The second variant is theoretically identical to the first one, except that we added linguistic annotations to this. So each partners ran their favorite tool chain for linguistic annotation over their own corpus. Again, as I will talk about later, this is essentially universal dependencies type of annotation. So we have part of speech for every word. It's base form or lemma, which is very important for the inflectionally richer languages than English. Syntactic annotation, as well as named entities. So this is the second set. And the third one is we took all the corpora that we have, and then a colleague of ours machine translated them into English. Now, this obviously opens up a whole new vista of possible applications over these corpora, because suddenly you have all the 29 corpora in the same language, and you can do direct comparisons between them as far as their textual content goes, of course. But one should be, of course, aware that this is machine translation, so not everything in them is correct. The problems that we have, the biggest problems was actually the hallucinations that these deep models, neural models, are prone to. So you get, it's very readable, in fact, but you do get kind of phrases, or maybe sometimes even sentences in the corpora that have no relation to what is actually in the source corpus. So this should be definitely used with a grain of salt. One other thing that was done here was to translate named entities. So names were then patched, as it were, because these neural models tend to translate proper names as well. And you get really, really funny results then, because, of course, you do not want proper names translated. So the procedure that machine translated the corpora also fixed the proper names to their original forms. And that's your third data set that is available, and the last one here. Now, it's of course nice to have the corpora open available and that you can download them, but still, this is a lot of data, gigabytes of data. Not everybody is able to actually have a powerful enough machine and enough computer knowledge to do something with that. That said, the corpora are also available on our CLARIN installation of no sketch engine. I'm not sure if you know what sketch engine is, but yeah, it's a corpus analysis system, which is maintained and developed and everything by a company in the Czech Republic, in Brno, Lexical Computing. And Sketch Engine is a commercial system, so you need to pay every year to be able to use it and to be able to use the corpora they mount on it. But no Sketch Engine, Lexical Computing is very nice, and they have a somewhat, as far as functionality goes, reduced version of their Sketch Engine. That's why it's called no Sketch Engine. Which is openly available, and we installed it on our CLARIN site. So all the corpora, including the English one, mounted as a parallel corpus with the originals, is available on no sketch engine. So that means that whoever wants to do some analysis on these corpora can do it directly on the web without downloading the corpora. So that's one installation, and the other one is TI Talk, which is installed in Charles University in Prague, in the scope of their CLARIN, I think. And this is, again, kind of like no sketch engine that you can search through the corpora and get your keyword in context or maybe frequency lexica, but you can also read the corpora, so browse through them, which is a very welcome addition to your classical concordancer, because then you can actually drill down, as it were, into the text and do close reading, not only distance reading over these transcriptions. And yeah, so these are the two ways that they are available for users. But for developers, we have a project on GitHub, a repository there. And again, here is the URL. And we will go into more detail about this a bit later. So to give you an idea of the coverage of the corpora, because all the corpora were produced by the partners that took their country's corpus in charge, and they were tasked with doing essentially 90 or 99% of the work on their corpus. So typically scraping the data from the web. Some had some special deals with their parliament so that they could get the database of the transcript directly, but for the most part, they were scraped from the web, and then they need to be cleaned. Some people or partners already had their own parliamentary corpus, and they didn't need to do that again, but they did need to then convert it into our encoding and typically add quite a bit of metadata to their corpus as well. So they all did that individually, and that's also the reason why the time coverage as well as the scope of their parliaments, parliamentary corpora, parliaments, varies quite a lot. So here you have the list. As you see, one thing is countries. This is the ID, sorry, or autonomous regions in Spain. The second column is the language that the corpus is in. Typically, it's a one-to-one mapping. So yeah, Austrian uses German and so on. But quite a few, as you see, are also bilingual for one reason or another. Typically, it's the country that is bilingual. They have, like Belgium, they use French and Dutch. Two out of three have Spanish in their corpora as well of the regions. Finnish also uses Swedish and so on. So we do have bilingual corpora, and in which language a particular speech or maybe even a paragraph inside the speech is, or a segment, is of course marked in the corpus. And then what kind of bodies are this is my shorthand of saying, is this the upper chamber or the lower chamber? In British terminology, this would be the Commons or the Lords. But we kind of try really hard to adopt a common terminology across all the parliaments and also distinctions, even though this was quite a big thing to get semi-right, because of course the setup of the whole parliamentary procedures and the setup of the parliament differs very much across the nations. Anyway, this is what we have. Quite a few are unicameral parliaments, so we by definition have everything, yeah. Some make a distinction between the lower and the upper house. And in one case, which is the Belgian one, we also have some committees inside the corpus. The fourth column is how many terms, parliamentary terms the corpus covers. And maybe more interesting is the from and to dates. As you can see, this varies quite a lot. We had this base we wanted to make them temporally comparable as well. So we said 2015 to 2022 is kind of the intersection time, and that was, I think for all of them except for the French one, that was actually possible to do. But quite a few of the parliaments extended this quite a bit. As you can see, the Austrian parliament covers 27 years, which is, I think, the maximum. But almost all of them cover, at least 6 years or more. How many millions of words were spoken for each year also differs quite a lot. And here, I think the British one is by far the most wordy, I would say. So that's 16 million words per year, but some quite less, especially the regional parliaments have a lot less per year. And then at the end, you have the millions of words that were spoken in the complete corpus, again, with Great Britain being the winner in a sense, with 120 million words spoken. Altogether, this is just a little bit over 1 billion words. I think 1.1 billion words is the whole set of corpora. So what kind of markup do we have in the corpora? The main kind of organizing principle is that we have one file per day, at least one file per day. Some corpora have more than that. So if you have the upper and the lower chamber, each one will typically have their own file, or some people even have more kind of fine-grained distinctions, so you can even have more sessions in the single day. But anyway, we do not want to have more than one day in one file, and this is your essentially your XML document in a sense, which has the metadata and then has the transcriptions in it. Each of these files is marked up what kind of meeting it is. So it can be a plenary meeting or a meeting of a committee or what have you. And then inside, apart from the metadata for the whole meeting, you have the transcriptions. The transcriptions is essentially a series of utterances or speeches. In each speech, with very, very few not having this, is marked by the speaker that is speaking. We think that this is like a really important part of the metadata, that you know who is actually speaking, because you can bring in then metadata about the speaker, which we in fact do. So for each speech, we have who is the speaker and also what their role is, because the main distinction here is between the chair and regular speakers, which are MPs. Because after Parliament 1, we didn't actually have that yet, and it turned out that the analysis is quite useless because almost half of the speeches, or exactly half usually, are spoken by the chair. But the chairs speak about procedural matters, not really, they don't have very contentful speeches. And then whatever analysis you do, half of them are speeches by chair, which kind of doesn't give you the kind of analysis you typically want. So we do now mark up every speech, either it is a chair or it's a regular speaker. And then we come to the actual speech. The speeches can contain various types of transcriber notes, like applause, or maybe microphone didn't work, so we do not have the speech or a part of the speech, so we have a gap there. Or you can have some sort of interventions from the audience and so on. We thought this is, can importantly illuminate the speech itself as well. So we took quite some pains to get these notes inside. They constantly caused problems, not the least because speeches apart from notes are just plain text, so it's easy to linguistically annotate them. But once you have notes, you have this mixed content, and this becomes technically a bit more challenging to actually annotate correctly. Anyway, we do have the speeches, and then we come to the maybe more interesting metadata on the speeches, which is, and this is something that has been recently done for version 5 in the scope of this ParlaCap project, is that each speech is marked up by its CAP topic. CAP is quite a big project in social sciences, and it's called, this is Comparative Agendas Project, and they came up with a set of, a typology of topics that people in this kind of political context can talk about. And we took in the ParlaCap project the top level topics. I think there's about 12 of them. I'm not quite sure, but you can imagine it's trade, or maybe European relations, or defense, or ecology, and so on. So each speech is now marked by the topic that it is discussing. This is a single label markup. So even though it's two, it could be in theory 2 topics, it's the majority topics that is here marked up. This was done in a typical machine learning setting. So a set of these speeches, a sample was manually annotated, and then a machine learning system was learned on this and applied over the complete set of corpora. And the other thing that was done in ParlaCap, we also mark each speech by its sentiment score. This is actually a number going from 0 to 5, as most very negative and very positive. So you have this number inside, but also a discretization into 6 or 3 levels of sentiment. Yeah, the 3 is the typical one, negative, neutral, and positive, and 6 is a bit more detailed. So this is also marked up for every speech. And of course, with this and quite a few of the other annotations, one should be aware these are automatically made. So of course, they also contain errors. It's not 100% correct. So much for the speeches. Now moving on to the speakers, they are stored separately. So with each speech, you only have a reference to the ID of the speaker, and the speakers themselves, the data on them is stored separately. So you essentially have quite a large database of very personal information, not very, but yeah, still personal information. But that's a nice thing about parliamentary corpora, that you don't really need to worry about privacy protection and so on, because this is all public and they're politicians, so they have to count on the data being public as well. So for each speaker, we have their name, of course, and then we have quite a lot of timestamped metadata. So were they a minister or an MP or their membership in political parties, this information all has dates associated with them, because obviously you're not a minister forever. So important to know when you were a minister and of what. And depending on the corpus, quite some other metadata as well. For instance, their public URL, date of birth, gender, other things as well. But that depends on the corpus. Quite important here is also their membership in their political party, or maybe parliamentary group is the correct term to use here. Again, these parliamentary groups are again stored separately, and they have quite a few metadata associated with them. For instance, their orientation on the left to right political axis. This was taken from Wikipedia manually for all the parliamentary groups. And also we took quite a lot of variables from the Chapel Hill European survey. This was quite a large undertaking, and so I think you have 30 or something variables for each political party covered, which tells you their, again, maybe orientation on the left to right axis, but also their stance on immigration, on European integration, on various economic and political topics. And this is stored in terms of a number as well. This could be really valuable data, but it's a bit less valuable than one might wish, because not all the dates are covered, not all the years are covered that we cover in Parliament, and also not all political parties were covered, and also not all our parliaments were covered. So they were all interested in the ones in European Union, but you also have, for instance, Turkey in our parliament, or Serbia, which are not covered by the chess variables. But still, for those you have quite a bit of metadata associated with them. Okay, so this was like a really brief introduction to the latest version of Parliament, so you have an idea what's in there. Now, how do we set up the whole production environment for Parliament? Now, we do have a couple of essential assumptions, namely, everything we do on Linux, so we don't cater for kind of PC type of specialities. Yeah, we assume Linux machines to work with our data. The encoding of Parliament is a parameterization of the Text Encoding Initiative guidelines. Again, I don't know how familiar you are with Text Encoding Initiative, but if not, this Text Encoding Initiative, it's, I think, the longest running encoding initiative that exists. It started 40 years ago. It was at that time based on SGML, which was a precursor to XML. So whatever is encoded in TI is encoded in XML. And what the TI does is set up quite a complex schema, which you can parameterize for your particular project. And the TI is supposed to cover any type of text with any type of analytical markup in any language from any period. So yeah, very ambitious. The result is that the guidelines have about, I think if you print them out, 1,300 pages, but they do cover everything from poetry, drama, manuscripts, plays, and so on. So quite a number of text types, and also analytic mechanisms. So linguistic analysis, or for people dealing with old manuscripts, you have text critical apparatus, you have for speech corpora markup, and so on and so forth. So this was quite a long process, actually, until we decided that TI is the way to go. So we had a workshop now, I think 10 years ago, even more, where we kind of canvassed what kind of encoding schemas various people use for encoding their parliaments. And it was mostly TI or TI based. So yeah, we decided to go with TI. We, of course, customized it, as is TI kind of expects you to customize their schema for your own project, because there's very few projects that have all the text types that TI covers. So you kind of choose the models you want to use, and then you can fiddle with those a little bit as well to come up with the schema that you really want. And that's what you did. That's what we did. We first of all came up with the so-called CLARIN schema, which is a very general TI-based schema for encoding corpora of parliamentary debates. But then in ParlaMint, we really kind of pared it down to cover exactly what we wanted. We complicated even a bit more to kind of, we have two sets of schemas. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'll just tell you this bit. So we made our own bespoke schemas in Relax and G XML schemas to really, really validate the corpora as tightly as we could, but then also have a TI-based schema, which is a bit more permissive, but still quite narrow. And with the TI schema, also come the guidelines that tell you how to actually encode the corpus according to our schema. So that's the encoding, yeah? It has the formal XML schema, and it has the guidelines all bundled together in one file, from which you can then produce the Relax and G schemas for formal validation and the HTML guidelines for people to read. So that's the encoding. The validation we, of course, do with these schemas. That's their point in a way. But we also do quite a bit more validation. So we do validation with the XSLT, and we'll come to that as well. But yeah, there's quite a bit of validation going on with XSLT, which is a W3C scripting language for dealing with XML documents. So for converting them from XML to some other type of XML, or from XML to whatever you want, like HTML. I have to admit, we also use some Perl, because me and Matyáš are kind of Perl fanatics, which is not kind of the language of choice anymore. I guess it would be better for the whole thing to be in Python, but yeah, we're both kind of Perl aficionados. So there you go. We do have some Perl basically to tie scripts together. Now, apart from validation, we also do conversion. We'll come to that. So we release our corpora. The canonical encoding of our corpora is TI. But of course, we are aware that a lot of people do not use TI or XML for that matter. And very few applications will just take XML files. So we do produce a number of downstream formats. We'll come to that, which are then hopefully immediately usable for whoever is interested in the corpora. So we do that with XSLT and a bit of Perl as well. And then going back to validation, yeah, we do this kind of formal validation with scripts that then tell you there's an error here or a warning there. but we also do functional validation. So once you actually convert your TI into something else, the conversion process itself can expose some errors. And once you get your downstream format, you can, of course, notice errors in that as well. And we do notice errors, or did rather, and then come back and try to fix them, or at least say, okay, there's an error there, and we do know about it, but we didn't manage to fix it. And that is then, reported on Git as an issue. Okay, and so the final thing, the technical infrastructure is, of course, Git. And I am moving to that now. So, ParlaMint, everything we do is on GitHub. So that is from the point where a partner produces something that they think is a valid ParlaMint corpus, but typically isn't yet. It goes into this Git-based workflow. And there, everybody that wants to do anything with to produce their own ParlaMint corpus is well advised to familiarize themselves with our GitHub environment. First of all, reading the README and the contributing files, and we will do some more work on the contributing. It could be better. All the scripts that we use for validation, conversion, and to build a particular release is also on GitHub. I should say, we could do, as always, I think, a better job at documenting and structuring our scripts, but still, they are what they are. At the moment, you do have samples of our ParlaMint corpora in TI and all derived formats on Git, so that's something that you can look at and get an impression of what things look like. Rather than downloading the complete large set of corpora directly from the repository. You just have samples to have a quick peek into what things look like. We also have some common multilingual taxonomies there. I won't go into that. That's another of these details which could take us too far away. You have the formal TI XML schema there. You have the encoding guidelines on Git as mounted as GitHub pages. And then all the communication, at least in ParlaMint 2, went through Git. So if somebody has a problem, it's reported on GitHub issues. And then we kind of discuss it there and try to solve it via GitHub issues. Much, much better than doing it via email, because there it gets all confused. And here it is a bit more structured and public as well. Now, how does one contribute to ParlaMint? So the first, and of course, the by far the hardest bit is getting your corpora into a ParlaMint encoding, and that is actually up to the contributor to do. As I already said, on GitHub, we do have samples and encoding guidelines to give the target encoding, including, for instance, file naming conventions, how things should be structured into folders, directories, and so on. So that should be of help. And then, as I said, the ParlaMint corpora come in, well, actually 3 flavors, but I won't go into the machine translated part, because that for Australian corpus is not really relevant, is it? So we'll talk about here 2 flavors. One is the plain text file, which I already explained. It has all the transcriptions in it, all the metadata. And then the assumption, at least, was that first you get this plain text TI, and then you take that and linguistically annotate it automatically, of course. And the linguistic annotation was also performed, or is performed, by the contributor. We don't really know which tool to use for all these languages. But we do know that what we want is, as I said, linguistic annotation that conforms to the universal dependencies guidelines for that particular language. And then we also add, which is not part of the universal dependencies, we also add named entity annotation in the standard classes of person, place. What was the third one? Person, place.
Organization and location.
Organization, thank you, Matyáš. And then everything rest, everything that's left over, but is still a named entity, yeah? And the way these things proceed is that a contributor is first expected to produce a small sample, like very small sample, for instance, 3 days, each one with 3 speeches, and the metadata that corresponds to those 3 days and 3 speeches, so that we get kind of the basic encoding straightened out, and then take it over and produce the complete corpus. So this involves quite a bit of dealing with GitHub. This here maybe is a bit too detailed, but just to give you an idea how to start on the GitHub journey, as it were. So the idea is to first create a GitHub account. Yeah, you do have to do that if you don't have one, and then you fork the ParlaMint repository into your own account. A point here is that we use 3 branches in ParlaMint. One is the main branch, which is something that has typically already been properly released and is stable. Then we have the data branch, which is essentially meant for contributors to experiment there with their data. And then we have the developmental branch, which is more or less something that we and Matyáš use to develop new scripts or to fix old scripts and so on. So for contributors, the data branch is the important one. They should do everything there. And first, they should initialize a sample directory. And this is actually relatively elegant. It's done with the makefile, which Matyáš made. So you do something like it says here, you give it a target, which is called setup parliament. And then you have to give it the parliament name, the code of the country or autonomous region, and the list of languages that this parliament has. And it sets up it initializes the folder and the root file there with this essential metadata and the essential structure. This is something that then you can fill out with your particular data. So once a sample has been produced in this samples directory, it should be, of course, committed and pushed into the fork GitHub repository, and then a pull request is made into the main repository. And once you make a pull request, this triggers via GitHub Actions automatic validation and conversion. So you get some feedback, automatic feedback from that immediately. And then Matyáš and me come into play, and we review the pull request and give you feedback, what's wrong and what could be better. And then after quite some time, here we have 883, which has been going on for over a year or almost a year now, but we're almost done. What the problems are and how we can fix them. And this is an iterative process, of course, until we come to a kind of sample that is okay. And once you do have the sample, you can move on to doing the whole corpus. So this is the same thing, but in a graphical way. Basically, you have your local ParlaMint corpus, and then you push and pull from your fork, and then you make a pull request where a validation goes through into the main ParlaMint, the CLARIN-funded repository data branch, and then once everything is okay, the pull request is merged, and then your sample appears in the main ParlaMint repository on GitHub. So this is kind of a GitHub-based workflow, which is of course nice to have, but you can also do use quite a few of our scripts locally as well, and this is done via this makefile that I already mentioned. So if you just type in make, it'll give you a long list of commands of what it is able to do with a short explanation of them. The thing here, if you do plan to work on your ParlaMint corpus and it is rather big, you need a rather big machine, because these processes are XSLT, which is not the fastest of scripts, and also loads everything into memory, so you do not need a lot of memory as well. Coming to the conclusions, I briefly presented the corpora with a focus on development of a new corpus. Many details have been by definition left out. This has been going out now for almost 5 years, so we also added quite a bit of metadata, so the whole setup has become rather complicated, I have to admit, but we do have some online documentation. Hopefully it should become better as time goes on. Samples are quite useful, and all the communication, we really appreciated it being done through GitHub issues, because with mails it gets really kind of messy and complicated. Also, the issues are public, so we then, if somebody has a similar issue, we can point them to an existing one and it helps them. So GitHub issues is the channel to communicate. If you want to kind of delve a bit deeply, we do have two publications in the Journal of Language Resources and Evaluation. They don't describe the latest version, but yeah, 90% or 95% between 4.1 and 5.0 is identical. These two papers kind of complement themselves. We didn't go back and repeat everything that we said in the first paper, but we took it from where we left off in 2023 for the latest paper. The web page that is on CLARIN's website gives quite a few further publications as well, kind of from workshops or conferences dealing with particular aspects of Parliament. I should just mention, I didn't talk about this at all, but it might be of interest to you, is that a wonderful thing about parliamentary debates is, from the view of researchers, is that typically the actual audio or maybe even video is available as well. My colleague Nicola and his team have been working on this, and Matyáš as well, on gathering corpora which are actually spoken, yeah? And so far, this has been done for 4 languages, Croatian, Czech, Polish, and Serbian, and the latest version of this, 3.0, has just been released and has over 6,000 hours of speech and so on. So this is not directly part of the Parliament corpora, the transcriptions, but the two are to a certain extent aligned, and this is, yeah, ongoing work. Further work, continue to support developers of new Parliament corpora. We are quite glad to do this because we're happy for people to use our setup. But the main thing that happened apart from ParlaCap is that we got another CLARIN flagship project called ParlaMint. And this is, in a sense, identical to Parliament, except we're not dealing with parliamentary proceedings, we're dealing with historical newspapers. So we'll take, or we've started with this already. We took the complete infrastructure of ParlaMint and will adapt it to going from speeches into old newspapers. There's quite a bit of differences, obviously. It's a completely different text types. And we will do this in the scope of ParlaMint. But the idea is that, of course, we will find things that could be done better in a general way. And once we do find these things, we will implement them not only in ParlaMint, but in ParlaMint as well. Yeah? So we'll try to keep the common basis in both corpora aligned. And with this, yeah, I will stop. I see I took more time than I thought I would, so we actually won't go and look at GitHub. You, of course, very welcome to that by yourself, but we'll skip that and, yeah, probably move on to questions because we still have only 80 minutes left. So, yeah, thank you for your patience, and I'm happy to accept, or we're happy to accept questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tomaž. Are there any questions?
I've got one. Well, I've got a few, but I'll start with one. Given the distributed scope across so many countries, what was the biggest challenge for you keeping this all going?
Yeah, 2 challenges, I think. One is that if we would have, for instance, one contributor and us two, this contributor would make some mistakes in encoding their corpus. And yeah, we would go through this consultation process. It's not that we have all the answers. Yeah, often we had to think very hard together with the contributor in order how to fix these things, but we would go and fix the errors. The problem is if you have 29 contributors, or yeah, 25, I think was the actual number, you do not get, each one of them will make their own mistakes. Yeah, so you are completely shocked at how many different ways things can go wrong. And they did go wrong, and they're still going wrong, unfortunately, because just now in ParlaCap, we, again, when the team was making these derived tabular files from our metadata, some issues cropped up which we never thought about. For instance, that the linguistically analyzed version and the plain text version actually do not contain the same text. Yeah, with some countries, some text was missing from the linguistically analyzed version. Even more bizarre, for some other countries, some text was missing from the plain text version, because it turned out that they actually started from the linguistically analyzed version and from that made the plain text one, which was something we never even thought about that somebody would want to do, but somebody did. Yeah. So the problem is, if you have so many contributors, you have very, very different types of mistakes that can happen and do happen. And I'm sure when whatever new country will come along, they will come, well, not come along. It's not that they do it on purpose. Yeah. These things just happen depending on the source data. New types of mistakes crop up. So that's the first problem. The second problem, which I mentioned, is that I'm no political scientist. I know to an extent our Slovenian parliamentary system, but I was really shocked how different parliamentary systems are to each other in various little details. So coming up with a common schema that can describe all these parliaments is quite difficult. And I am afraid that, I don't know, these types of meetings that we have, for instance, or the types of chambers that exist, this is an approximation. Yeah. Quite a few countries are not utterly happy with what we came up with. We tried collectively, not just us two, but we tried to do our best. But we really missed a kind of political scientist with very broad horizons that is an expert in political systems to help us along here. So this was, to an extent, an amateur effort, and I think it shows a bit in various bits and bobs. This is not so very problematic if you're dealing with an individual parliament, but if you want to do a comparative analysis, of course, it matters. Yeah. So these distinctions are also quite difficult to, especially the British one, right? So if you decide to do the Australian one, I guess you're modeled on the British one to a large extent. I'm not quite sure, but I would imagine. They were not, so saying upper and lower chambers for the Lords and the Commons did not go down quite well, and things like that. So yeah. So that's what I have to say about that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Following on slightly from that, Tomaž, could you say anything about what you did at the design stage to try and ensure that the resources would be useful in a cross-disciplinary way?
What we did, I said I would mention this, but didn't actually. And I'm not sure if this is discipline or maybe, more kind of what we know or who we know about and what they need is, to an extent, linguists. Because that's how we grew up in a way. We were computational linguists. So we put a lot of effort into putting this corpora on the concordancer, because going from the TI to the concordancer view of things does involve quite a bit of processing. For instance, as I said before, we have people and it says he or she was an MP from this date to that date. If you go into the concordancer, you want to have this information directly associated with the speech. Is the person speaking MP or not? Yeah. So it's not a huge thing, but still you have to kind of check the date of the utterance and see if they were an MP at that particular date, and then put this information into the metadata for the particular utterance in the concordancer. Yeah. So this kind of processing. So we went to quite a bit of trouble to make that nice in the concordancers. We also then have these TSV files, so tabular files, which give you the complete metadata that we have available for each utterance. So huge TSV files. we also have plain text files, and we also have CONNELU files. But then the first or the second user that came along complained that we do not have the data that they want, because it seems it's very difficult to do. Yeah, people will have different use cases, and so they will have different needs of what the data that they want should look like in terms of technically. Is this TSV or is CSV, or is it something that you can directly import into R, or who knows what? We don't. Yeah, we tried, but it was kind of sailing blind in a way, because we didn't know what the users will want in advance. So that's definitely one thing, and it turns out in ParlaCap already, we had some quite heated discussions recently, what should go in ParlaCap or not, how it should be formed. So I would say we don't actually know what the users will want, and would be really happy to get some feedback on this, again, ideally via GitHub issues. The problem with users is you typically do not get feedback. They will download the file, they will open it, they will try to do something. If it doesn't work, they will say, oh, this doesn't work, and they will forget about it. Yeah, it's very, very difficult in this internet age to actually, even though it's really simple, to get feedback from the users. Yeah, we're happy to get it. Until we do get it, yeah, we don't know actually what they want. Yeah, so that has been an ongoing problem actually. Yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your questions, but anyway, my best take here. Yeah.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or make a comment? Well, in that case, what remains is to once again express our deep gratitude to Tomaž and Matyáš for getting up early and getting online and talking to us and giving such a wonderful presentation, which is of great value to all of us. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for attending. I'm very glad we could. I'm very glad that I hope we could have been of any help here. Yeah. So as I said, if you will have more things, please feel free to contact us. If it's something, you can do it, of course, by email. But if it's a general question, please do it via the issue. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.